Moscow, 1987. The stage lights fade up on a packed arena. Thousands of Soviets sit in silence. No cheers, no applause, barely a twitch. Their eyes are fixed on one man, an American at a grand piano. Billy Joel. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not in the Soviet Union, not in the middle of the Cold War, and definitely not performing rock and roll or in front of party officials and a generation raised to fear the West. But he came anyway, and just as the crowd starts to warm up, just as something real begins to stir, bright lights flash across the arena. The TV crew wants to film audience reactions. But this isn't New York. In Moscow, a spotlight doesn't mean you're seen. It means you're being watched. The audience freezes. Joel feels the connection slip away. And then he snaps. Mid-song, he screams at the crew, smashes a microphone stand, kicks over his electric piano, all in front of Soviet cameras. Chaos. And yet, that's when something incredible happens. Why did Billy Joel bring American rock to the heart of the USSR? And how did a public meltdown turn into one of the most powerful performances of his career? To understand why Billy Joel's 1987 Soviet tour was so extraordinary, you have to step back. Look at the world he walked into. The Cold War had lasted for decades. America and the Soviet Union weren't fighting with bombs. They were fighting with ideas, with borders, with spies, with fear. On Soviet soil, Western music was considered dangerous. Rock and roll, subversive. It rarely made it past the Iron Curtain without being banned, censored, or bootlegged onto scratchy tapes passed in secret. Then came Mikhail Gorbachev, a different kind of Soviet leader. He introduced Glasnost, openness, and perestroika, reform. He wanted to modernize the USSR, loosen control, and maybe, just maybe, let a little Western culture in. That's where Billy Joel saw a chance. He wasn't invited, he volunteered. Joel planned the entire Soviet tour himself. No paycheck. He paid for the crew, the equipment, the flights, everything. He brought his wife, Christy Brinkley, his daughter, Alexa, his whole band, and a message. Music can build a bridge. Even across enemy lines, the Soviets didn't know what to expect, and neither did he. This wasn't just about songs. Joel was walking into a system where freedom of expression was still risky, where even clapping too hard could look suspicious, and yet, that was exactly why he came. Opening night in Moscow. The arena was full, but the energy, cold. The audience sat stiff and silent, row after row of emotionless faces. No cheering, no movement. Up front, high-ranking Soviet officials, blank expressions. It felt more like a political inspection than a concert. Billy Joel noticed it immediately. He was used to roaring crowds back home. This felt like playing music into a void. Still, he kept going. Song after song. Honesty. Piano Man. Carefully chosen. Trying to break through the silence. But nothing landed. Then, he took a risk. Joel leaned into the mic and began a song the Soviets didn't expect. Back in the USSR, by the Beatles, a Western anthem about them. For a split second, the room hesitated. Then, a laugh, a clap. Heads turned, shoulders relaxed. Something cracked. Joel followed with jokes, gestures, eye contact. He reached for more than music. He reached for their trust. Slowly, young people began to nod to the rhythm. A few stood, some clapped. It wasn't a roar, but it was a start. For the first time, Billy Joel saw it. These weren't enemies. They were kids, parents, dreamers. Just like his fans back home, they were waiting, maybe even hoping, for someone to treat them like people, not propaganda. And that night, they got just that. Behind the music, something else was happening. An HBO film crew was documenting the tour. The plan? To show the world what it looked like. When an American rock star played behind the Iron Curtain, Joel had invited them. He wanted this to be seen. But not everyone on stage understood the room they were in. To capture audience reactions, the film crew turned massive spotlights onto the crowd. In a U.S. stadium? No big deal. But in the Soviet Union, that meant something else. Bright lights didn't say, "You're on camera." They said, "We're watching you." Suddenly, the crowd that had just started to open up froze. Dancing stopped. Smiles faded. People sat back down, looking over their shoulders. Fear returned. Billy Joel saw it happening in real time. One moment, the room felt alive. The next, it was back to silence. All because someone wanted a better shot. That pressure, the invisible fear, pressed down on every song. The show might have looked fine from the outside, but inside, something was building. And it wouldn't stay quiet for long. The tension had been building all night. Billy Joel had slowly won over the crowd. They were dancing, clapping, finally alive. The moment he'd worked so hard for, it was happening. And then, the spotlights hit them. Again. Those same bright beams, aimed right at the audience. From the stage, Joel could see it happen. Faces stiffen, arms drop, bodies sink back into chairs. Fear, again, on cue. He lost it. Midway through Sometimes a Fantasy, he shouted into the microphone, "Stop lighting the audience." No response. "Stop lighting the audience." Still nothing. The lights stayed on. The crowd stayed frozen. Then came the moment. Joel jumped from his bench, grabbed the mic stand, and slammed it into a stage light. Sparks flew. The band kept playing. He kicked over his electric piano, let it crash. Gasps from the crowd. Soviet officials panicked. The film crew froze. The band didn't miss a beat. Joel walked back to the center, picked up a new mic, and kept singing. That's when the lights went down. The cameras backed off. And the crowd, they erupted. Not because he broke equipment, but because he did something no one did in their world. He stood up publicly for them. That night, Billy Joel didn't just play a song. He smashed through a wall. After the meltdown, everything changed. The next night in Moscow, different energy. Word had spread about the music, the shouting, the piano. But more importantly, word had spread that someone on that stage had cared enough to fight for the audience. This time, people came ready to feel something. And they did. The rest of the tour, Moscow and Leningrad, became a celebration. Young people jumped from their seats, clapped, sang, danced. The fear didn't disappear, but it loosened. Bit by bit, the music won. One night, Joel pulled fans from the front rows onto the stage. They waved American and Soviet flags, side by side. He played barefoot. Christy Brinkley danced and took photos. It was wild, it was loud, and it was something the USSR had never seen. The concert wasn't about perfect sound. It was about connection, the kind that cuts through fear, through silence, through systems. When the tour ended, Joel released Concert, a live album. The HBO documentary followed. The world saw not just a concert, but a cultural shift. Billy Joel didn't come to start a revolution, but he gave people one moment where they didn't have to be afraid, and sometimes one moment is enough. Billy Joel didn't end the Cold War, but for a few nights in 1987, he did something politics never could. He made the enemy feel human. He didn't bring speeches. He didn't wear a flag. He brought a piano, a voice, songs about love, anger, and loneliness, things that cross borders without needing translation. In doing that, he reached something deeper than headlines. He reached people. Years later, Billy would say, "They weren't the enemy. They were just people." Simple, but radical at the time, because both sides had been told the opposite. 4 generations. His meltdown wasn't a mistake. It was a turning point, not because he broke a mic stand, but because he refused to let fear control the moment. And maybe that's the real story. Not just about a concert in Moscow, but about what happens when someone stands up loudly, emotionally, and says, "You matter. I see you." That's what music can do. Not fix everything, but break the silence. Long enough for someone to feel something real. So, what do you think? Did Billy Joel just lose his temper on stage? Or did he pull off one of the boldest acts of musical diplomacy the world's ever seen? If that hit home, smash that like button, share it with a friend who loves a good music story, and don't forget to subscribe, because these moments, they deserve more than just the highlight reel.